3, 2, 1.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with review of Indonesia in accordance with Resolution 5/1. The review is based on the national report, the completion of UN information, and the summary of stakeholders' information, both prepared by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Marshall Islands by Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The Republic of the Marshall Islands warmly welcomes the delegation of Indonesia to its 4th UPR cycle. We commend Indonesia's ongoing humanitarian efforts during the pandemic, including the disembarkation of over 500 Rohingya refugees. We also commend Indonesia for supporting several recommendations related to West Papua following its last UPR in 2017. We note that while respect for human rights has generally improved in the country, concerns remain about ongoing reports citing abuses and violations. As such, we share concerns of various special rapporteurs on the issue of the human rights situation in the region. Reaffirming the importance of open and constructive engagement and respecting Indonesia's territorial integrity, we offer the following recommendations. 1. Respect, promote, and protect the human rights of all indigenous people in West Papua by ensuring the right to self-determination through inclusive dialogue. 2. Work closely with the OHCHR to commence a visit to the region by the High Commissioner in response to calls from the Pacific Islands Forum and the OACPS. 3. Continue efforts to align its NDCs with the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees of warming.
Sorry for disturbing you because time is over. Distinguished representative of Netherlands, you have the floor.
Mr. Vice President, the Kingdom of the Netherlands thanks the delegation of Indonesia for the presentation of its national report. We commend the Indonesian government on the continued efforts to strengthen the rule of law, including the recent passing of the Anti-Sexual Violence Bill. Building on these important efforts, additional measures will be welcomed to ensure full access to justice and further safeguard the prevention of impunity. The Netherlands recommends Indonesia to 1. Continue to investigate human rights abuses, including those in the Papua provinces, and to bring those responsible to justice in a timely and transparent manner. And 2. Refrain from any actions that may constitute harassment, persecution, or undue interference in the work of lawyers and human rights defenders, including their criminal prosecution on grounds such as the expression of critical views. I thank you.
I thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of New Zealand.
Mr. Vice President, New Zealand welcomes this opportunity for constructive dialogue with Indonesia on human rights. New Zealand commends Indonesia for its efforts to promote and protect human rights, including through its National Human Rights Institution. New Zealand recommends that Indonesia take steps to abolish the use of the death penalty in practice and in law. To ensure the full protection of freedom of religion or belief, New Zealand recommends that Indonesia conduct a review of existing laws and policies to ensure their compatibility with the right to freedom of religion in line with Indonesia's constitution. New Zealand recommends that Indonesia upholds, respects and promotes its human rights obligations in Papua, including freedom of assembly, speech, expression, the press and the rights of women and minorities. New Zealand recommends that Indonesia take steps to eliminate legislation and policies that discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation, gender, or that criminalize sexual relations among persons of the same sex. Thank you.
Thank you. Next representative of the United States of America.
The United States welcomes the distinguished delegation from Indonesia. We commend the efforts of Indonesia in the preparation of their report. We recommend that Indonesia, 1, conduct prompt, thorough, and transparent investigations into all allegations of extrajudicial killings and human rights violations in the 5 Papuan provinces and hold perpetrators accountable. 2, review and revise laws and regulations that unduly restrict freedoms of expression, including Criminal Code Articles 218 and 219, 304, 309, 310, 311, and the 2008 Law on Electronic Information and Transactions, Articles 27, 28, 29, in line with Indonesia's international human rights obligations and commitments. 3, repeal laws that unduly restrict freedoms of association and peaceful assembly, including Law Number 17-2013 on societal organizations and law, and Law Number 9 of 1998 on freedom of assembly. We remain concerned by reports of escalating violence in the Papuan provinces, including reports of extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, and torture. We wish Indonesia a successful UPR. Thank you.
I thank you. Distinguished representative of Vanuatu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Vanuatu has listened carefully to the Indonesia's presentation on the human rights situation in the country, and in a spirit of constructive dialogue, we would like to make the following recommendation to the government of Indonesia. 1. Accept without delay the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights visit to the provinces of Papua and West Papua. 2. Enhance the protection and promotion of the right to peaceful assembly and association, especially for the people of Papua and West Papua provinces. And 3. Implement inclusive policies to prevent and address the negative effects of climate change and reduce disaster risk, especially for vulnerable people or minority living in remote areas.
Distinguished representative of Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and welcome to the distinguished Minister of Indonesia and his delegation. Australia welcomes Indonesia's continuing commitment to equitable economic development throughout the country. Australia also welcomes Indonesia's recently enacted sexual violence crime law. Australia recommends that Indonesia establish a formal moratorium on the use of the death penalty and in the interim enhance safeguards including adequate legal representation for cases attracting the death penalty, non-application of the death penalty to those with mental illness. 2. Ensure criminal code revisions and law reforms accord with international laws and obligations. 3. Uphold the rights to freedom of expression, assembly and religion or belief. Prevent discrimination on any grounds including disability, sexual orientation, gender identity and intersex status. Enhance efforts to reduce violence against women and girls. 4. Finalise investigations of all human rights violations in Indonesia, including in Papua, and ensure access, including by credible independent observers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Slovenia.
President, allow me to express the appreciation for Indonesia's engagement in the UPR. Slovenia welcomes Indonesia's efforts in the field of human rights, including the adoption of the sexual violence crime law, amended law on marriage, and regulations on the prevention of child marriage. Remaining legal and social barriers in the access to legal and safe abortion in accordance with the WHO standards, however, remain a matter of our concern. Allow us to express Slovenia's concern about the reported abuses towards the indigenous peoples in Papua. Slovenia recommends Indonesia to ensure investigations, accountability and prevention of impunity for the human rights violations against indigenous peoples in Papua carried out by members of security forces. I thank you.
I thank you. Distinguished representative of Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We appreciate Indonesia's presentation and continued leadership in promoting pluralism and democracy. Canada also welcomes progress made in the areas of women's empowerment and disability rights. Canada recommends that Indonesia, 1, ensure protections for labor, including those working in the informal sector, under the proposed omnibus law on job creation. 2, take measures to protect the rights of freedom of expression, association, and assembly through legal provisions at the national and subnational level by amending the Electronic Information and Transaction Law, the Pornography Law, and the Criminal Code Law. 3, investigate allegations of human rights violations in Indonesia, Papua, and prioritize the protection of civilians, including women and children.
3, 2, 1.